Right. Good morning once again. I see they've actually let Sylvia Kachola in, which means she's now ready. And according to the program, we need to have her first, Christopher. So I was not seeing her online, but now I'm seeing her, which means we're good to start with her. Silva, allow me to just, mention this briefly about you so that we have more time to discuss than to talk about who we are. So Sylvia David Kachola is from Malawi, and she will be our first presenter on the on the provision of additional cash transfers, and if this actually promoted food security amid COVID-19. Sylvia, you have got your 7 minutes marks. If you are able to even summarize, it's all great. You may start.
Okay, hello. Mm, I, Good morning. As he has already said, my name is Sylvia Kajola, and I'll be presenting on this poster, which is titled "Does Provision of Additional Cash to Existing Government Cash Transfer Beneficiaries Promote Food Security in the Midst of COVID-19?" So, this is an update from Malawi. So, social cash transfers have increasingly become an important component of social protection programs in most African countries, which is including Malawi. So, in 2021, the Malawi National Statistic Office reported that over 50% of Malawians are poor. So, this vulnerable population in Malawi often face high levels of food insecurity. And one way to protect these vulnerable families, cash transfers was introduced, which is a central element in social protection. So these cash transfers actually promote food security by improving individual food consumption. So, in the context of this study, Malawi reported its first COVID-19 case in April, that is in April 2019. So, after the COVID-19 outbreak, lockdown measures were implemented, including school closures, workplace closures, travel bans, which affected heavily on labor markets and businesses, which in Malawi. So during the first round, approximately 80% of the households in Malawi reported a decrease in their total income. And this COVID-19 pandemic brings an additional threat by dragging that is already vulnerable families deeper into food security. So the figures are just showing what I've already said about how Malawian income decreased after the outbreak. So let's talk about the Atrapua graduation program. So it's a 3-year IFAD funded program which is being implemented in 9 districts of Malawi. That is targeting a total of 20,800 beneficiaries that are currently under government social cash transfer program, where they were given an additional cash and seed capital alongside coaching and mentoring. So the goal of this UPG was to reduce poverty, improve livelihood, and enhance the resilience of rural households on a sustainable basis. So the objective of this study was to assess whether additional cash to the social cash transfer beneficiaries had a positive impact on the beneficiaries' household food security in the midst of COVID-19 in Malawi. So the methodology of this whole study used both qualitative and quantitative data, where the sample size was 342, that is comprising of 236 beneficiaries and 106 non-beneficiaries. So the key findings or the results, the first of all, there was poverty measurement. So the study just used household consumption as a measure of household welfare, it was followed, that is used to generate Malawi poverty rates using the Nationally Representative Integrated Household Survey, or so-called IHS. So the main key findings was food consumption score and household diversity score. It was used to measure household food security. So on food consumption score, it was classified into three groups. That is poor, borderline, or acceptable food consumption. So on the results, it showed that the highest proportion of social cash transfer program plus an additional cash, which are these are the beneficiaries, had 19.9% and 36.9% acceptable and borderline food consumption score, which is respectively. So the beneficiaries had better acceptable food consumption score and borderline than the comparison group. So it also showed that the highest proportion of social cash transfer program, which are comparison group, household had a poor food consumption score. So it was around 71.7%. So one quote, I managed to get one quote from UPG beneficiary, a male beneficiary, which said that I had managed to deal with all the problems that I used to have in the past, and my household has improved. I'm able to buy food for my family, which was a big challenge in the past. So that's what male UPG beneficiary said. And on dietary diversity score, so it was also divided into three groups: good, medium, and low. So the result was the highest proportion of social cash transfer plus additional cash. These are the beneficiaries. So had a good diversity score, which was about 65.3%. And the highest proportion of social cash transfer only, these are the comparison group, 26.4% household had a poor dietary diversity score. So in conclusion, let's conclude that the results of the comparative study showed that the highest proportion of comparison groups household had a poor food consumption score. And also, the highest proportion of this comparison group households had a low dietary diversity, which these were used to measure household food security than their counterparts. So the treatment group guys, the treatment group had better dietary diversity score, had a better what a food consumption score. So the study showed that an additional cash had a huge positive impact on food security, and the social cash transfer is appropriate but not adequate to address food insecurity of vulnerable households in the midst of COVID-19. So what are we recommending? We are recommending government should ensure that the social cash is transfer is adequate by providing, we can also provide an additional cash as seed capital, coaching as well, mentoring in the midst of COVID-19, just like the program is doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. And that's 7 minutes.
Thank you.
This is commendable. Thank you so much for that and keeping to time. I guess questions will come at the end. So if you may, you be stick around because I also even have two questions already. I think our next presenter should be Dean Mutata. Um, if we could quickly allow Dean Mutata and we get started. Yes, Dean is in. Dean, allow me not to talk a lot about you, but rather have you talking to us about what you have done. Over to you. And 7 minutes. If you see me flicking my video, you know that you're left with 1 minute. Thereafter, I'll stop you, not necessarily because, of whatever, but because of time. Thanks, Dean. You can go ahead.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you, Doc. I would try as much as possible to carry out this presentation in exactly 7 minutes. I hope people are able to see my screen. So I am presenting on a poster that speaks to experiences of women and girls with disability in accessing sexual reproductive health services in the context of COVID-19, particularly the curse reality of the Zimbabwean context. And maybe just a little bit of background. I'll try as much as possible to stick to my 7 minutes clock. A little bit of background is that I work at an organization that deals specifically with adolescents and young women in promoting their sexual reproductive health services. So this what promoted this study basically was the effect that I deal directly with some of these challenges that young women as well as adolescents are facing. So maybe just to dive into the background, I would like to speak to how COVID-19 has brought unquantifiable and unprecedented social economic damage to generally the young people as well as young women as well. But to be quite honest, if we are to look into the context of COVID-19, young people living with disability, particularly young women and girls living with disability, face the wrath of the effects in as far as COVID-19 is concerned, and as far as access to sexual reproductive health is concerned. And even UNFPA acknowledged that during disasters, women and girls suffer double the tragedy, as their capacity to anticipate and resist and recover from disaster is quite narrow. This is also borrowed from the fact that little is spoken about, or little is acknowledged in issues around unpaid care work. So you can even imagine the unquantifiable disaster that then falls towards this particular group when it comes to COVID-19. So particularly this presentation was just interrogating the experiences of women with disability in accessing sexual reproductive health services. Maybe to just jump into the objectives. One of the particular objectives of this presentation was to assess the impact of COVID-19 on young women with disabilities in accessing sexual reproductive health services. And the methodology that were used when it comes to this research was I interrogated the qualitative research methodologies, particularly reviewing second and the literature review. And maybe just jumping into the results, or rather the findings of the study. I would like to acknowledge that one of the key things that was really a challenge amongst young women as well as women with disability was access to authentic and correct information insofar as sexual reproductive health is concerned. I would like to bring to everyone's attention that COVID-19, when it came out in the scene, it was a new pandemic that we had never experienced before. And the coming of COVID-19 also saw the rise of digital era, or the use of digital technology. And a lot of information was being spread or cut across within the social media platforms. And it was really difficult, even for people without disabilities, to authenticate some of the information that was circulating insofar as access to sexual reproductive health services and consent. One can possibly imagine what could happen if one is living with a disability. For instance, if one is visually impaired, you can imagine how difficult it is for you to then authenticate some of the information that was being circulated on social media. And also, I would like to acknowledge that, or I'd like to bring to everyone's attention that one of the other findings was issues around caregiver dependency. You also acknowledge that women and young girls with disability, depending on the disability, some of them during COVID-19 depended on their caregivers. And to be quite honest, you'd realize that the coming in of COVID-19 meant that we created shadow pandemics. And within creating shadow pandemics, issues surrounding sexual reproductive health and rights became secondary, and everyone is so concerned with issues around COVID-19. So you can imagine now going to a caregiver, asking for a caregiver to take you to a particular clinic just to access sexual reproductive health services. In this particular case, let's talk about contraceptives, let's talk about condoms. It becomes a secondary issue to everyone who's within the vicinity of fighting COVID-19. So it was really a challenge for these people to actually access sexual reproductive health services. And also, I would like to acknowledge issues around the lack of proper reporting systems around GBV and sexual gender-based violence for young people living with disability, or young people with disability. You'd acknowledge that many a times young people with disability would go to a facility, or rather as a therapy. In our case, it's a Zimbabwe Republic Police, and they want to report a particular assault, a particular abuse. But it will be difficult now because they require assistance from a caregiver, they require a translator. And in some instances, these caregivers happen to be the person who's actually abusing them. So you actually realize that the absence of these systems or the absence of reporting mechanisms made it difficult, very difficult for this particular group to actually access sexual reproductive health services in a comprehensive and in an authentic way. And however, maybe just to wrap up my discussion, to actually say that one of the things that came out as one of the recommendations is that there is need for a comprehensive multi-sectoral approach involving government, civil society, as well as community individuals in coming up with proper structures whereby young people and even women living with disability are supposed to access sexual reproductive health services. Thank you, and over.
Thanks so much, Dean. And you took 6 minutes. This is wonderful. But I'm sure you have teased us so well,
Yeah,
and soon
indeed,
we'll be talking and engaging more on it. So thanks again for
indeed,
that. Yes.
indeed.
So
Thank you.
now, can I call upon Christopher Chombo to come through? And Christopher, we do the same. We will give you 7 minutes. At the sixth minute, I start flicking my video to just, show you that you are left with a minute. And at seventh minute, I'll have to come through and stop you. Now, as you connect, perhaps we can quickly take this opportunity, to talk to some of the issues that have been brought forward by Sylvia and Dean. So maybe Sylvia, if you can quickly tell us how much is the additional cash transfer per month that we have studied, and if time permits, we'll also get to Dean to tell us if he thinks a caregiver allowance could be a possible way to advocate for a grant like that in Zim, given that caregiving is really critical. Sylvia first.
Okay, this program was actually implemented by five implementing partners. So it was varying differently across some implementing partners. But actually, the minimum was almost 100,000. So people were given like actually per month almost 100,000 so that they can use that as a seed cash, as a seed capital. That is, thank you.
Thanks for that. I'll follow up on the 100,000, be calculating on what it is in US dollars so that our international audience can have a good understanding. Dean.
All right. Thank you so much, Doc. I'll try to respond to the question that, if I got it right, is it possible to maybe structure a caregiver grant, given that caregiving is quite crucial when it comes to women and girls with disability? I would like to maybe bring to everyone's attention that one of the sustainable ways in which maybe we could bring in caregivers and their attention is to build their capacities economically, building their capacities in a way that when they're providing caregiving services to women and young girls with disability, it then becomes easier for them. And I do not also think that solely giving them money is a sustainable way, but maybe building their capacities economically. It then creates a sustainable way that even when the grant is no longer in existence, they are able to then carry forward with their caregiver services to women and girls with disability. Thanks, and over.
Thanks so much, Dean, for that. Maybe great. Christopher is finally with us. I was about to move on, Christopher, to Dr. Maria Oliver. So, Christopher, your time. So, 7 minutes max. Thanks. So you may want to unmute Christopher and you start. I think you need to click those two buttons, somewhere where you need to unmute your mic as well as your video should you like us to see you. Okay, to save time, so can we pull down Christopher's presentation? We will come back to you, Christopher. We will try and help. Let's move to Dr. Maria, if she's ready. Dr. Maria Oliveira, if you can come through now, and we are going to do the same with you. We give a maximum of 7 minutes. At the 6th minute, I will flick my video so that you would know that you have a minute. All right, even Dr. Maria Oliveira is still not with us currently. So let me go back to Sylvia and Dean as they help Christopher to manipulate his way through. So Sylvia, if you have managed to come up with the US dollar, and maybe at this point in time, I would also, ask you to even tell us the transfer amount before this edition and why there was the thinking to add, particularly during COVID. You can come through, Sylvia.
Okay. So actually, the beneficiaries, the social cash transfer beneficiaries, like they don't actually receive like monthly. Sometimes they skip 3 months, then after they skip maybe 3 months, then at the end of 3 months they receive cash. So I was trying to convey to the 100,000, which was minimum, into US dollars. It's about 80 US dollars. So actually, some implementing, as already said, that this program was implemented by 5 implementing partners. So some other partners were first, they gave their beneficiaries actually $80, which is almost 80,000 kwacha in Malawi. So first they gave them $80. Then at the end, they also gave them certain amount, which is I think around $100. At the total, they were given $180 per beneficiary. That is depending on implementing partners. But other implementing partners, they gave their beneficiaries small amount than that. Others, they were giving their beneficiaries big amount than 180. So 180 US dollars. Thank you.
Thanks, Livia, for that. Dean, if you can come through on this, I want to give you more time, perhaps, to explain how you see, the capabilities approach or the productivities approach that you have actually said to say, instead of maybe just giving them grants, it could be we could go for something else. I want to give you so much space now to talk about that something else and how you see it playing in Zim.
All right. Thank you so much, Doc. I think speaking to issues around building the capacities of caregivers, I think if we introduced some of economically like issuing microfinances, sort of like a grant to build the capacities around soap making, or even dishwash making, so that the idea that we want to create is that we don't create a dependency on a particular grant or a dependency on, say, cash transfers, but we want to at least build the sustainability to say that by the end of the grant that we're giving them, they're able to have enough capacities to sustain themselves even way after the grant is granted. So as I was speaking to earlier on in terms of the capacity, that building their capacities, we could actually introduce issues around dishwashing making and even soap making, so that at the longer run, they're able to then sustain themselves moving forward. Thanks so much, Doc.
Thanks, Dean, for that. So if we have others who may want to pose questions, by the way, please feel free to type them I guess Sylvia and Dean will be actually happy to engage you on that. And while we still wait for Christopher to reconnect, I also realized that Sylvia had a bit of challenges with internet. Let's hope this time it will be okay as I try to bring her back to give her a chance to actually expand on the issue of, you know, food security. Um, is there food deprivation? Is there food insecurity? How has it been measured in the study? And if you want to also talk to that and expand, because I've seen you've done quite a lot, and so this may be a time for me to, you know, allow you to do so, because we don't have others to talk at this moment.
Okay, on the amount, actually, I just wanted to add on amount that the graduation cost per beneficiaries. So as I already said, I just wanted to add what I've already said, that they had like 5 implementing partners. For example, one of the implementing factors was World Relief Malawi, and the other one that was the Save the Children. So I said that the lowest, actually, it was depending, the amount was depending on the implementing partner. For example, World Relief, so their amount was 112 US dollars, while they Save the Children, it was over that it was higher than that, which was almost 350 US dollars. So that's what I wanted to add on that. And okay, on the food insecurity thing, since the coming in of COVID-19, the lockdown measures such as school closures, workplace closures, travel ban, most people in Malawi lost their jobs. So they lost their jobs, they lost their businesses, and there is this positive relationship between income and food security. So the higher amount you have, the higher the food security. So when people lost their jobs, their businesses, so like they had small amount, they were not able to provide for their families, which led to highest food insecurity. So the bringing in of seed, this study actually used food consumption score and dietary diversity score, which, as I already said, so I used food food consumption score and dietary diversity score as a measure of food security. So as I've already indicated in the results, that these beneficiaries, actually the treatment group, showed that their food consumption score and dietary diversity score was much higher, was good, was acceptable, borderline than the comparison group, which these are the just government social cash transfer only. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that, Sylvia. And I think Chombo is still struggling, so I still have you two. Oh, great. We have also someone joining in. And if you could type their name IT, and I'll be introducing them quickly and I will know who. While that is being done and we have that one coming through, I wanted to come back to you, Dean, for the last time, hopefully, on my last question to you. It's not necessarily a question, but an opportunity to give you a minute or two to tell us more about the sexual reproductive health and rights services that are being offered to, women as well as people with disabilities.
All right. Thank you so much, Doc. I would like to take this opportunity to speak largely to some of the sexual reproductive health services being offered to young people in general, as well as digressing much into women and girls with disability. To be quite honest, when it comes to sexual reproductive health services, the services that we offer, the services that are offered are the same. But however, there is also special attention that we need to give to women and girls living with disability, or women and girls with disability. One of these key factors I would like to allude to is contraceptives, family planning and contraception. Many a times, the general consensus or the general belief amongst people without disability is that people with disability don't really die or don't really engage in sexual activities, which is really a flawed type of mindset if you really look into the human rights approach to sexual reproductive health issues. So whenever we advocate or whenever we push for services, we always talk about inclusive and comprehensive nature of services. And one of the things that we dive much into is issues around HIV testing and counseling. This should be given, or this should be granted to each and individual out there requiring the services, particularly women and girls with disability. We also talk about issues around STI screening, which should actually be given as well to each and every individual. But however, one of the particular things that I've noticed that always lags behind when it comes to those with disability, it's issues around GBV systems, reporting systems. You'd notice that many a times within our reporting structures, particularly in Zimbabwe, within our reporting structures, it would be easier for someone without a disability to just walk into a police station, to just walk into probably a service provider and stay out how they were affected or how they were assaulted. And it's easier because the systems already, they're not disability friendly, so it's easier. But for a person with disability now, it becomes a challenge because the systems or the structures in place are not disability inclusive. You'd find out that, as I was saying earlier on, you can walk into a police station today and you want to speak in sign language, but unfortunately, you may not even get someone who can do sign language translation for you. The list can go on and on and on in terms of how there are no disability friendly services out there. But I would say particularly the sexual reproductive health services that should be given to young women and girls with disability should be disability friendly, journeying from HIV testing and counseling, GBV, SGBV, and GBV reporting mechanisms, moving to family planning and contraceptives, because also, like I said earlier on, we also need to acknowledge that even if I have a disability, I am also as much sexually active as a person without a disability. So the inclusive or the comprehensive nature of these services should actually be taken care of and should actually be taken cognizant of. I think I'll submit that as my submission for now. Thanks and over.
Thanks so much, Dean, for that. We have had quite a robust engagement, the three of us, and it's great that we ended up having more time. So now what I would do is to formally introduce you and your full profiles, and then we close the session. So with me, I've had a good conversation with Sylvia. I pronounce that word. No, my tongue fails to usually pronounce it. David Kachola, who is from Malawi. He has a BSc degree from Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources. She is a creative researcher currently working and living in Lilongwe. Her main areas of focus as a researcher are food security, nutrition, social protection, and resilience. Then also I had a great conversation with Dean Mutata, who is the SRHR Youth Officer for SRHR Africa Trust based in Zimbabwe. He is a passionate and self-driven advocate for gender and social justice. He is a young activist championing human rights issues for vulnerable populations, particularly women and children. He also works on issues of sexual health, social protection, and gender. So thank you so much, Sylvia, and thank you so much, Dean. I am Gift Tafulea, and now we can exit and join the other sessions. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc.